Hey, this is McCoy Buck, and I'm going to show you how to do an eye rig. This was a tutorial that was highly requested of the community, and I'm going to show you basically how to do this with smart bones, control bones, and very simple animation. You can totally change up the style for this type of eyes. These kind of have like a Muppet looking eyes, but yeah, you can totally change up the style for your own character. Everything still applies. I'm going to have the downloadable files for you to download if you need to reference them to see where keyframes are placed or however you want to do that. And I hope you enjoy this tutorial. Alright, so one of the first things that we're going to do is we're going to draw out our eyeball. So I'm going to go ahead and just name this layer eyeball. Go to my shape tool, S on the keyboard, grab my circle, have autofill on, style white. And then I'm just going to draw right here, holding shift and alt, a circle. And there you go. The alt is what's going to be able to constrain it towards the center. Now I'm going to draw my pupil. So I'm going to go to my vector. I'm going to go pupil. And do the same thing. I'm going to just constrain it there in the middle. Right now it has a white fill. I'll go ahead and change that. So I'll hit Q on the keyboard, select my shape, which you can see kind of disappeared. And I'm not going to go for a complete black, so I'm going to go for a really dark gray there. Pretty close to black. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go to vector, and then I'm going to create my eyelids. Now I'm just going to have the eyelids, both the top and the bottom, on the same layer because this doesn't really matter when I'm doing smart bones. It's actually easier to keep it on one layer. So for the eyelids, I actually have always done eyelids improperly. I've always done kind of like the Family Guy style. I'm gonna go ahead and pick a color here real quick for the eyes. That looks good. And I've always done kind of the square, kind of closing over the eye, you know, kind of Family Guy, kind of like a shutter. And it wasn't until I took an anatomy course and I found out that the eyelid really doesn't do that. And it doesn't make sense for why I should do it that way. It kind of has a cheesy style and it looks better if you just connect it from the corners of the eyes, just like your eyelid would normally connect. So what you're going to do is you're just going to go ahead and let's see, you can use a triangle or whatever you want. But yeah, for consistent purposes, to have it consistent, I am going to use the rectangle, and I'm going to draw it out like so. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to center that right in the middle of the eye there as much as I can. And then I'm going to add a point right there in the middle. Now I'm going to add that point because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, holding down shift, I'm going to move that up. I'm also going to put a point directly above, and I'll just go ahead and take these points out. So either you could use your add points tool and just do that manually, or you can do it like I'm showing you now. Either way works. And then I'm going to take that and I'm going to drag that up, and then I'm going to curve that right there. And then I'm going to curve that at the top too. So this part doesn't really matter. And as you can see, it's doing weird stuff with the Bezier when I go to curve that. For some reason it grabs the handle. So what you can do as well is you can select that and then you can just add a curve with this right there as well. So that's another way that you can do that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both of these ends right here. Whoops, let's try that again. So I'm just going to select both of those and just holding down shift with my select points tool or transform points, I'm just going to drag that down somewhere towards the bottom. Okay, so this is going to give me a completely flexible eye. So it's covering all of the eyeball, and it's going to be moving just with points. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take that. I'm going to hit Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V, and so I just duplicated that, and then I'm going to flip the layer. So I'm going to go here to flip vertically, and I'm just going to bring that down below the eye. And as you can see there, that looks pretty good. So you got your eye that's kind of connecting. If I wanted to, I could actually take and bring that a little bit closer to the center of the eye. But as you can see there, it kind of messes with the eyeball where it pops out from the eyeball. So that's why I have it kind of like you see there. And that's about it for the eyelids. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of my layers. And now what we're going to do is apply masking. So I'm going to highlight all my layers, and then I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go to group with selection. And now I'm going to just call this eye 1, because I'm going to have 2 eyes. So first I'm going to get all of my first eye fleshed out, get that all ready, and then I'm going to duplicate it for my second eye. That way all the work is done. So now I have eye 1. And now what you're going to do is you're going to create a mask. So I'm going to go up into eye 1, right click, double click, and then go to masking, hide all, apply, okay. And there you go. And that's how you get your masking there. And then if you wanted to, you can mess with it a little bit more, kind of get the eyelid shape that you want. But again, all this is going to be changed to however you want it using Smart Bones. So now I have eye 1. And now let's go ahead and let's make eye 2. And to do that, you're just going to right click and you're going to duplicate your layer. And there you go, you have eye 2. So that was easy. And then what I do is I go ahead, take eye 2, and I'm just going to move it to the right. So just like that. And then if you wanted to, if you're looking at this and you want to move your pupils around, go ahead and do all that, because the next part is going to set up the bones. So what I'm going to do next, just for just keep things organized, is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to group with selection, those 2 groups, and I'm just going to call this eyes. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually, instead of having that as a group, I actually want to create a bone layer. So I'm just going to right click it again, and I'm going to do convert to bone. So now I have those as a bone layer to use. And now with that just being on one layer, I'm just going to move that to the center of my screen. And just go ahead and get ready to start adding my bones. Now the bones are going to be really easy, depending on what version of Anime Studio or Moho that you're using. You could do this one of 2 ways. For your eyes, you can simply just making sure you're on your bone layer, just click, and you can add your pin bones, which are only in Moho 12, or you can draw out regular bones. So either way. So I'm just going to add pin bones because these are going to be hidden either way. And then what I want you to make sure that you're doing when you're doing that is that you're not parenting each bone. So when I did that, I just clicked from one bone to the next. And it looks like I didn't parent it. I can't remember, but I don't think pin bones actually parent. Maybe they don't. So that's highlighted. Okay, they don't parent. That's the one thing about pin bones. But if you're drawing regular bones, make sure that they don't parent one another, and you'll be good. Now what I'm going to do is with those 2 bones selected, or with me on the bone layer, I'm going to hit Ctrl-A to select both the bones, hit S on the keyboard for my bone strength, and then I'm going to hit 0. So you want to make sure that you have absolutely no bone strength for those layers. And then I'm just going to go back to B on the keyboard. You can see there when I just click off, or let's do that again, you can see it's set to 0. And then I'm just going to hit B on the keyboard to go back to my regular bones. All right, so now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create smart bones. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead. Let's bind these bones real quick. So I have this bone right here, B1, and I have B2. So what I'm going to do for a keyboard shortcut that I want you to get used to using to do this quickly, is you're going to Alt right click, and that is going to select the layer itself. If you're familiar with Photoshop's shortcuts, it's the same thing. So it's gonna quick select the layer, and now I know that this is Pupil. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to right here with that bone selected. I'm going to go to bind points, and it's important that you bind the points. I've tried it with bind layers, and what I'm going to show you, I couldn't get it to really work very well with bind layers. So make sure that you bind the points of the pupil, hit bind points. Same thing, go back to your main bone, select it, Alt right click, and then select that pupil bone. Make sure they're all highlighted, go to bind points, and bind those points. Keyboard shortcut, I think, is Enter. However, I've gotten the habit of using the bind points button because I tend to mess that up. Okay, so now those should be bound, and you can test that by simply using your manipulate bones tool and just clicking and moving that around, and those work really good. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is on our same bone layer here, and making sure that I'm not have anything selected, I'm going to create a smart bone. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw my smart bone right here. All right, that's it. Hit S on the keyboard, remove all the bone strength. So I'm just going to hit 0. Now, the reason why I do 0 is because sometimes, you know, when you're moving bone strength, you can move it like this, but there could still be like a decimal value of like 0.05 visible, and you might not even know it, depending on how you were doing it. Maybe you're going back to the other tool and you accidentally adjusted it a little bit, as I did there, and it doesn't look visible at all. So I always get into the habit of making sure I don't have any bone strength. That's a common mistake among many that have other things moving around that they don't know why it's moving. So with that bone selected, go to bone, make smart bone dial. And now I'm just gonna call this, I'll just call it blink, even though he's not really gonna just be blinking. And I'm gonna have my minimum angle at -90, maximum angle at 90. Frames, I'm gonna set that to 120 because what I wanna do is I wanna have an even amount of frames on both sides, so 60 and 60. And then separate actions for positive and negative angles, I'm not gonna do. This is just preference. You can do this one of two ways. I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna do it. And you might understand once I'm showing you this way how you could have done it. But I like doing it this way. So I'm gonna hit OK. And now what I got down here is, let's go ahead, let's take those linear and let's just make those smooth. I don't know why, I just preference. So you can see here that it's starting from the right and it's rotating all the way to the left. Now what I want to do is I want to come here to 60, or wherever it is going to be. It's going to be 55, but I'll just say 60 for whatever the heck's sake. And I'm just going to move that straight to the middle there. And what I'm doing is I'm just holding down shift and that's constraining it at a 30-degree angle. So it's going 30, 30, 30. And I'm just holding down shift, hitting T on the keyboard and rotating that so that it's at 60, setting that frame right there at frame 60. And the reason why I think it was wanting to do 55 is because we're actually starting from frame 1. So you got frame 1 to 120, so technically that's 119 frames total that it's using. And that wouldn't be the middle, but it really doesn't matter, especially with an eye blink like this. So as you can see there, I actually did this this smart bone and it set up my blink here, my actions. So this is something that was new, that was added. I'm using Moho 12.3. So this is something that was new and added. If you go to your window, docking, you can dock now your actions right here. And I think that's really cool because before you usually had to do it in a separate window and it kind of got in the way, and it would have been nice to be able to dock it. So thank you for the Moho development team for doing that. It's really cool. So let's go ahead. So now we are in. So this is how we know we are not in the timeline, or sorry, not in the smart bones. And blue is going to mark it that we know that we're in our smart bones. So we know we're in we know we're in our smart bones. So I'm going to have this all the way to the right. I'm going to have this as his eyes wide. And then I'm going to have the default and then closed. So the first thing I'm going to do before I set wide is I want to set my keyframes for the default position. That's very easy to do. So all you're going to do is you're just going to right click and you're going to select your eyelids, and I'm going to hold Ctrl-A. So I did an alt right click, quick selected that layer, Ctrl-A, and you can do this any way you want. I'm just going to hit T on the keyboard and hit reset. Technically, you can just click and it's going to grab those keyframes as well. So I'll do this example. I'll hit Ctrl-A and I'll just click, and you can see it grabbed all those keyframes. To make sure I get all the points though, I'm just going to hit Ctrl-A and then reset. And what that's going to do, it's going to grab that default position there. And also, as you can see there, because those eyelids are overlapping, that's why I had them in separate eye groups. So I didn't have the same masking, or else it would be affecting one another's eyes. So keep your eyes independent, just like I did there. Okay, cool. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do our eyes open. So all the way. So let's go ahead and let's just grab one of these eyes. And I'm just going to pull that all the way up. Again, you can see right here, it's all overlapping the other line. That's totally fine. That actually doesn't matter because it's outside of the masking area, which is the eyeball. All right, so there you go. So that's how you do that. Now, when you're doing this eye, maybe you want to get it exact. So what you can do, what I found out that's pretty cool in case you didn't know, is you can go to your eyelids, you can double click it. Nope, not double click. You can right click it, go to quick settings, and you can click on pass. And now what this is going to do is when I don't have that selected, it's still going to have those paths visible. So I can kind of use it as reference. This is really good. This is just kind of an example. You wouldn't really need to do it in this example, but that's really good if you wanted to get something exact. For example, if you wanted to place a smart bone exactly where the points of the elbows meet, that's a really good way to do it. So as you can see there, I'm just going to kind of just line it up there. Unfortunately, Moho doesn't have any sort of referencing or reference lines or anything like that, like guides, I think is what they're called in Photoshop, which would be great, but so you just kind of got to eyeball it with the path that you have there. So again, I'm just gonna go ahead, I'm just gonna turn that off because it's not really needed. That's just to show you kind of a trick that you could possibly learn. So now watch, we're going to go from eyes wide open to normal, and now we're going to close them completely. So you're going to do the same thing. You're going to Alt right click. And now with eyes, the bottom eyelid does not close to the top. It's, I mean, and it's preference depending on how you want to do your style. But for me, I'm going to close my eyelid top closer to the bottom and then just pull that up just a little bit at the bottom. And what you can see there is I'm holding down Shift. So I'm clicking my point, holding down Shift. It's moving that directly down the center of the eye. And I wanted to be more specific with this particular one. So I wanted the point to match exactly in the middle as well. And that way, if you wanted to, you could weld that and that should give you a perfect weld. So if I hit Ctrl-R, you can see there's a little line right there, which is fine. You can basically overlap that if you want, and you have that completely covered. Also, if you wanted to add strokes to this, so you can kind of have strokes to your eye, you can do that as well. But just for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to keep it simple, solid shapes there. All right, and we're going to do the same thing for the other. So we're going to Alt right click, and I'm just going to drag that down, and I'm going to drag that up. And again, for this particular example, I actually want to have my path on, just so I can see if I'm matching up my eye path correctly. So I'm going to go back to my eyelids, and I can see there, for the most part, that looks pretty good. The top of the eye, I'm just going to go ahead and undo that real quick. Whoops. I undid the wrong thing. Got to get used to these keyboard shortcuts again. It's been a while since I've used them. I'm going to pull that up. So that's the top of the eye. And I'm just going to match it to here. It doesn't have to be exact, but oops. So I was doing something I shouldn't have been doing. I was not using Shift. I thought I was. So I'm going to hold down Shift, bring it down there, hold down Shift, bring that up there. Okay, now I won't be too particular about this, so I'll just leave it be. All right, so that's it. That's all you have to do. Now you're going to double click your main timeline, and that's going to bring you back into your main line. Now to test this, you're simply just going to, you can go back to your eyes, go ahead and close that down, and you can just move this just like so. All right, and I have my eye blink there. So that's perfect. Okay, now the next thing that I'm going to do, actually what I want to do is I probably want to move those pupils down a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to shrink that down. So Alt right click, I'm going to use my pupil layer, and using the points, transformation points, whatever it's called, transform points, I'm just going to select the end and whoops, let's try it again. I'm going to hold Alt and Shift and then Alt, and then I'm going to drag in. Okay, that's not doing it either. Let's see. I'm trying to get it to constrain. So I think I just need to hold Alt and it's going to center and then constrain automatically. Yeah, it does. Okay. Now let's see. Am I getting a scale? I'm not getting a scale. Okay, I'm not going to do that because I can't see what my scale value is, so I can get it even on the other side. So I'll just leave it like it is. All right. So now we got our smart bone. And now what we need to do is we need to add control bones, and those are really easy. So with control bones, you don't really want it to link to anything else. It's depending on however you want your bones to move around when everything else is moving. So technically you could have your smart bone linked to the eyes so that when the head moves around, or linked to the head bone, so when you create a head, your smart bone follows it. However, I don't do that because I don't really use these control bones that often. This is just actually out of request. Someone want to learn how to do an eye rig. Okay, so to create your control bones, I'm not going to have it linked to anything. I'm making sure nothing is parented. I'm just going to take and I'm going to drag up a bone. Again, same thing. I'm going to make sure my bone strength is at 0 and that it's not parented to anything. Again, hit P on the keyboard or reparent bone, and you can see that the arrows aren't going to anything like that. Okay, so this lets me know that that's ready to go. So this bone name is called B4, and I'll just go ahead and I'll just name this, let's see, I'll name this control. Okay, so this is gonna be your control bone. You want your you want your pupils to be linked up or controlled to the position of this control bone. So this one bone is gonna move both of these pupils, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So we know that this is B1, so if I come up here to bone constraints, you can see I have my options down here. I have target, angle control bone, position control bone, scale control bone. Now, I don't really want to do anything with scale. It doesn't really work with circles and these type of bones. It just scales it up vertically. It doesn't do anything horizontally. So I'm not going to do anything with scale. And you can go to angle. Angle, you can move this side to side, kind of like your smart bone, and these can move side to side. But again, I don't want to really do anything with that. What I want to do is I want to move the positioning of these pupils. So I'm going to go to here to position control bone. And with this bone selected, this is B1, I'm going to select my control bone. Now you have the values of 1 and 1. This just represents the value of how far it moves. So for example, I can do, so this is at 100%. So this is moving at the exact same speed. Whenever I move this bone, this is moving the exact same, not necessarily speed, just motion. It's moving at the exact same motion. If I change this to 2, when I move this is going to move 2 times faster, or 2 times the motion of this bone. So I'm just going to keep that at 1 and 1. That's representing X and Y, and that's it. And then you're going to do the same thing for your other bone. Actually, you could have kept that open, so you can keep this open, position, and then we're going to do control. So this bone, we'll just make sure again, B2 is linked to control, and B1 is linked to control. And now to test this, you can't do it on frame 0, because if I use the translate bone tool, which is what you want to use your transform bone, which is T on the keyboard. That just moves things in your design, which is on 0. But if we go to frame 1 and then we move that, you can see it moves just like you want. So now you have complete control over both of your pupils. You don't have to control them individually, and you know exactly where they're going. And because they're exactly symmetrical, they're going to be traveling in the exact same places. Okay, so that's pretty self-explanatory there. All right, so now we have all of this set up. So let's go ahead and let's do an animation so we can see how this works. All right, so the first thing that you're gonna do is we're gonna create keyframes for all of our standard positions, for all of our default idle positions, whatever you wanna call it. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to frame 0. I'm gonna take and I'm gonna hold this bone on my bone layer. I'm gonna select my bone tool, click on this bone, holding shift, click on this bone, and I'm actually gonna hide these bones. So I'm gonna hide controlled bones? Correct. So I'm gonna hide control bones because I'm not doing anything with those. Those are all gonna be moved with this bone right here. All right, so I am now with those now gone. I'm gonna hit Ctrl-A, select both of these bones, which is just my control bone and my blink. And I am going to, hit T on the keyboard. And I have my position, my length, my scale, and my angle. So the position, the length right there, I'm gonna hit reset. So that's gonna create the keyframe right there for the translation. The scale, I'm gonna hit reset. That's gonna change the translation for my scale. I'm actually not gonna do anything with that, but I'll just have that keyframe set in case I do screw something up. And then I'm gonna have my angle, which was already created apparently, which is the selected bone angle right there. Okay, so I have all my channels set. And then the other thing that I'm going to be moving around, that I know I'm going to be moving around, is the scale for the pupils, because I want to do those manually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the one pupil, and I'm going to go with T on the keyboard, and I'm going to change my scale. So I'm just going to hit reset, and that's going to reset all those points. Same thing, I'm going to hit reset. Okay, so now I have this to grab whenever I want to grab the default keyframe for this scale position. And it'll make sense once I'm animating the timeline if this is new to you. Again, if this is new to you, any of the bones that I have highlighted, you're going to see that they're going to be highlighted down here. Let's see, that's not a good example. Okay, so yeah, so for this bone, I took the, you know what, let's go ahead and do this. I'm not going to be using scale, and I'm not going to be using rotate for this. So I'm actually going to take it, I'm going to delete those two channels. So I'm going to delete that. Holding down Control, I'm going to delete that second one. Okay, so I just need a transform. So when this bone's selected and it's red, that lets me know that these are the keyframes that's recorded to this bone. Now when I select this one's a little bit different. I don't need scale and I don't need translate. So I'm going to delete both of those, but I need rotate. Rotate is how I'm going to be moving the eyes open and closed. Okay, so that's all done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click off, have those bones not highlighted. I'm going to come over here to frame 24. And I know that these are my default positions. Nothing, I don't want anything to move, animate until about 1 second in. Usually when someone has an animation, they have the animation start right away. Just kind of give a little bit of a pausing moment, a second's good amount of time, and then go ahead and start animating. So we'll do the blink first. So I just took it about a second. I'm going to go about 2 to 3 seconds out. And then I'm going to grab this tool, my smart bone, and I'm going to do my blink. And then I'm going to bring my eyes open again. So I'm just going to, you can do it one of two ways. You can click on the translate bone tool right there, or sorry, the rotation for this highlighted bone, and you can hit Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V. You can move it back, even if you wanted to. You can say, can you move this back up? Whatever you want to do. It's totally up to you. Again, I see that I have, oh, that's translate for the other tool. So this is, again, just remember that the red bone down here, the red channel is the one that's being selected. Okay, so if I go ahead and I hit play, okay, maybe I want to slow that down a little bit. So what can I do? With just that bone selected, I'm just going to select these just by clicking and dragging with my left mouse button, just click and drag. And I'm going to hold down Alt, and then I'm just going to drag that out a little bit. And now you can see that the top keyframe, the global keyframe as they're referred to, is also going to move with it. So I'm just going to hit that. Okay, so that's a better blink. So I just spaced it out basically 3 frames from each of the extremes there. Now I'm going to do the same. I'm simply just going to take and I'm just going to copy those keyframes 3 times because the animation I'm going to be showing you is very, very simple. So this is basically just going to go blink, blink, blink. And then I think there's one more blink in there, but I can't remember what I did originally. So we'll just see what it does. Okay, so we have our eyes facing this way. And we know that we have our translate bone right here, which is representing this bone. So let's go ahead and let's select this bone. We know we already have our standard position set there. However, we want when his eye opens, we want this pupil to be looking on this side. So all we're going to do is we're going to have this closed. And before it's fully open, I want to have the position of the pupil right here. But you can see that I can't see what it looks like with his eyes closed. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move his pupil with his eyes open. So I'm going to select this, holding down Shift to constrain to make sure it moves exactly straight to the right or whatever. I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to move it right over here. Now, something I just noticed that I don't like is his default eye position when it gets to here. I don't know what happened, but something got screwed up a little bit there. Yeah. So I'm actually going to fix something real quick, and let's see if I can do this with reference or relative keyframing. Let's see. I'm gonna try this real quick just to test it to see if it works. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to highlight all of these keyframes, and I'm going to bring down the rotation of this main bone for the smart bone, and hope that it's going to change the positioning of everything else. So I'm going to go to this default frame, and I'm going to bring his eyes down to here. I want his eyes there. So let's see if it holds. No, it doesn't. Dang it. So I was hoping that this main keyframe would also be here. So let's go ahead. Let's delete this before we get too far. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this main keyframe that I just copied with this position, and I'm going to paste it here. And then his eyes are going to close, and then they're going to open, and I'm going to paste it there. Okay, so that's where I want his eyelids to be when he's moving side to side. Now what I'm going to do is with that new rotation, I'm going to take those keyframes, and then I'm going to paste it to 2 and 3. Okay, so watch what happens. Blink, blink. Okay, so now it's staying at that position. I don't want it all the way wide quite yet. I'll do a wide animation somewhere in there. Okay, so it's going to go down. The eyes are going to blink. He's going to look to the left. Again, I'm going to grab this control bone. I'm going to make sure, just grabbing it like that, it's going to create a keyframe, but I just got to be careful that I'm not moving it when I grab it. So, okay, so that's good. But just to be sure, I'm just going to copy the last keyframe and paste it there. And that's another way you can do that. And then, that's one thing that I wanted to do. I actually wanted to move the position of this keyframe because, again, I didn't want his... Actually, you know what? That looks pretty good. But what you could have done as well, if you wanted that eye to be already there when he opens his eye, I actually liked a little bit of movement that it still shows, is I could actually have it in that position before the eye even opens. So you kind of get that same... You still get the effect that his eye is moving, but if I move this back, you can kind of see it a little bit more, just a little bit, not a lot. And yeah, just right there is all the motion that you can see, but that's all that I need. So with those keyframes copied from that previous position, I'm now just going to go to here, and now I'm going to move it to the other side. So you get this effect. Blink left, blink right. Okay? And then what he's going to do is we're going to grab that same position. So again, I'm just grabbing the translate of that bone right there. Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V. So now that position's being held for that amount of time. He's going to blink again, but this time I want him looking back at the camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to grab the default, because you know the default position are these keyframes right here. I'm going to hit Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V, and there you go. You can see that they moved a little bit, but they're back in their default position. So blink, blink, blink. And then what you can do for whatever you want, I mean, this is totally up to you. This is your animation, is I'm going to grab this bone again. And then I'm going to grab these keyframes, which is just the blink keyframe. And then he's going to blink. But instead of having it go back to this position, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it go all the way up. So I'm going to change just that keyframe right there. So it's all the way up. So he's going to go, let's just go from here. Blink, blink, all the way up. So his eyes are wide now. And what we can do is I'll actually, instead of having to go all the way down, I'll just set that as an anticipation. So he kind of gets like scared. So his eyes go down, like he's going to close his eyes, but they don't all the way go down. Probably about to, I don't know, to there or something. And then his eyes go wide. See that movement was a little bit too slow. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take and I'm going to drag these keyframes, because I know what these keyframes are. They're just this blink right here. I'm going to take and I'm going to drag them closer so that that motion from here to here is a lot faster. Okay, and one more time, I'm just going to take these keyframes and drag them in. So all I did is I just reduced this by a space, or not a space, a frame. So now it's a little bit quicker. And now, with his eyes wide, you kind of see it in the cartoons a lot. The pupils, they do the opposite of dilate. I think dilate, yeah, dilates when they get big. So they whatever the opposite of dilate is, they get small. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab, we already have it, we're going to grab the keyframes here for the default position, or if you want to record those same keyframes for that size, because we're going to change the size, just hit T on the keyboard. You can either select these, but you got to be careful because sometimes you can select and accidentally move it, but it'll still record those keyframes. Or you can hit reset. And reset is going to grab that default scale position. And so I want his eyes to go small. So right here, I want them to go, small. So I'm going to just take, and I'm just going to drag. Oh, and again, I want to make sure that it keeps centered. So I'm going to hold down Alt, and then I'm just going to click and drag in. Okay. And again, there's not really a way to know what the scaling is. You can, if you're doing it with layer, you can see what the scale value is, but right here it just reflects 1. So you just kind of got to eyeball it. Eyeball it. You got to eyeball it for the second one. So you're going to Alt right click, and then you're going to reset. And then again, let's see, I don't even remember what I did for the other one. So pupil, okay, so it was right here. This is where I scaled it. So just make sure that it's in that same spot. And I'm just going to drag it down, holding Alt. And I'm going to hit Ctrl-R just to render it and see what it looks like. And that looks good. Okay. So now his eyes are going to go small. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring it back to its default position. So I have this like set up as a GIF. So if you want to set this up as a GIF, have it as a rotating animation that does the same thing. You can basically do what I'm doing. So now what I'm going to do is with that now recorded, I'm just going to take and I'm going to copy my regular keyframe. Let's see. Yes. Yeah, this is the default. Okay. That's not what I wanted, sorry. Let's see, which one was it? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab the blink. So this animation, you can see his eyes are still the same. I want to make sure that his eyes go from wide. It's actually, yeah, that's fine. I want them to go from wide to wide. I want this to still be wide before it goes into its blink, and then it goes back to normal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab those wide, where I set the wide keyframe there, Ctrl-C to copy, Ctrl-V to paste. So now it's going to hold that position. And then he's going to blink. But when he blinks, I want his pupils to go back to normal. So what do? I just right click one of the pupil, and then I go to T on the keyboard and then reset. There you go. I have my pupil reset. But as you can see here, watch what happens. You can see that it's going to gradually go bigger. And that happens a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that keyframe before to make sure that it holds up until he blinks, and then it goes back to normal. See that? Blink, back to normal. Let's see. I think I saw a weird animation in there. Yes, so it's moving right there when his eyes are open. So I'm actually just going to bring that back so that it's big already when he opens his eyes, or when it gets to that point. Same thing. I'm going to go to the other pupil. I want to have that same pupil animation. Let's see, where did I put those keyframes? So I'm going to put them on 123 and 125. So to have it consistent, 123 and 125. So I'm going to put this first one to 123, go 2 frames, 125, reset. So when his eyes open fully, it's back to where it was. And then you can loop it off of 144 or wherever you want to loop it. So it's a 6-second animation total. So now let's look what we did. Hit play. Okay, and then it's just going to do the same thing. All right, and then when you're done with that, you can go ahead and render it. And I can show you that process if you want to set it up as a GIF. And then if you want to show this as your result, post it to the Moho Pros group or the beginners group, whichever group you're in. That would be really cool too. I'm going to have this available for you to download as well, for you to reference. If you need any help and you want to see where keyframes are being placed or whatever you want to do, you can totally do that. So let's go ahead. Let's save it. Save our file. Final. I'll just call this final. That way you know that this is the final one, because I had one before that I was just kind of going off of. All right. And then, yeah, if you want to change any of the color or whatever, maybe the pupil size, I like the pupil size better in this one. You can do that as well. But that's just to show you an iRig. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to hit File. Whoops, let's try it again. Export animation. Make sure everything's all right there. I'm going to go ahead, have this as an MP4. I'm going to make sure that it's a whole 144 frames, what I set it at. And I'm going to go to my video. Character rigging video. Cool. Okay. So that's going to go ahead and that's going to do its thing. All right. So now we're going to look at the playback of our animation here. And if you wanted to, you can take less of those eyelids out. If you don't like that look with the eyelids like that, you could also take that out. That might look a little bit better too. It's just stylistic. I do like this one better, what that looked like originally. But that's just one that you can use as well. That kind of looks like more like a Muppet. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna go to a website called Giphy, and I'm gonna go ahead and just upload it. So I'm gonna go to my file that I just created, and I'm going to upload it to Giphy, the MP4, not the file, but the MP4. Upload. And then you're simply just going to take and you're going to have your link. You can copy your link, and then you can go to the Facebook group, either Moho Pros or Moho Pros Beginners, whichever one you want. And you're just going to paste that link in. And there you go. That way I can see your results. If you have any questions or if you're struggling with anything, if something didn't turn out right, I can see basically what's going on there. Answer your questions. Other group members, other people that have watched this tutorial that are in the group can also answer your question and help you out. So I hope you liked this tutorial and you found it helpful, and I will see you later. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this tutorial series, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. I'll have new videos every Tuesday and Thursday. Also, if you want to help support the channel, I have the link to all the full paid courses down in the description. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.